Join me in my continued quest to find the greatest movie ever made. Maybe it's hiding in 1981. Welcome to my ranking of films which came out in the year 1981, or at least the ones that I've seen. Now, we have a record amount of films for today's list. It turns out I have seen 25 movies that came out in this particular year. I think the main reason why we've suddenly got so many today is because there was a big horror boom in 81, and I'm a big horror guy. There's lots of horror films on today's ranking. There's also some really good non-horror films on there. In fact, some of the non-horror films are done very well, but with so many films in the list, I'm going to try and keep things moving forward as quickly as I possibly can, but the runtime for today's video is probably still going to be quite lengthy. So let's get into it. Before I do, just a quick reminder that the film which wins today will go through to the grand final of 100 films further down the line, where I will be eventually crowning the greatest movie ever made. And the film which comes second today will also, numbers permitting, be in that grand final. So without further ado, let's get into it and find out what is my 25th and therefore least favourite film which came out in 1981. This is a film I saw just the other night for the very first time, and I sort of regret it because it's absolute garbage. Funnily enough, it's the most expensive film I've ever rented on Amazon Prime. It's £4.99 just to rent, whereas most of their other movies are sort of £2.50 or £3.50. So it's kind of odd that they would make this, of all films, their priciest film that I've ever come across. It does have restored version in brackets on there at the point where you pay, so I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but it's not like it's a super HD 4K version or anything. It's just a slightly cleaned up version of an old 1981 film. It's kind of weird, but the biggest reason why I don't like this film is that we follow events through the killer's point of view, but he's just not an interesting character at all. He's just a slob in his mid-40s with loads of facial hair, and he's just really boring to follow as he goes around this city killing women. There's only one good scene that I liked, and that's when he explodes Tom Savini's head. Or shall I say, Tom Savini explodes Tom Savini's head. There's one other good thing I like about Maniac, actually, and that's the fact that Caroline Munro's in it. She was in The Spy Who Loved Me. She was one of the Bond girls, and I've had a crush on her for most of my life, but I've never seen her in any other movie apart from Bond. Well, now I have, so it's kind of cool to see her. But apart from that, this was a really poor film, and I'm slightly surprised because a few people have said this is actually not bad. It did go on to get its own remake. So, I don't know, but definitely my bottom film today. Awful. This is a film I watched a few times as a kid, but I've not seen it in a long, long time. It's not like I'm against sword and sandals type movies. I just don't want to watch the really old ones anymore with the bad special effects. I can't even remember most of the stuff that goes on in this film. Just the big battle with the Medusa, that really creeped me out when I was young. I think there's a remake for this, but I've never seen it. Let me know in the comments if it is any good. I'd sort of be curious to check that one out at least once, but I can't see myself going back to the original Clash of the Titans. It's just one of those distant memories from when I was a kid that I'd just like to leave it in the past, in all honesty. But at least it's beaten Maniac in today's ranking. This is a film I watched just a month ago for the very first time with one eye on this list. I do have a long history with this film though, prior to even watching it, because when I was about 9, I was around at a friend's house one Saturday afternoon, and his parents just happened to have a VHS copy of American Werewolf in London just lying around, and being the naughty kids that we were, we put it on for about a minute. And the reason why it was only on for a minute is because it scared the crap out of us. It was already halfway through when we put it on. It was just at a moment where the werewolf is sort of moving around in the darkness, growling. So we turned it off. I think we were a little bit afraid of his parents catching us as well. But that would be the last I would see of the movie for 30 years until I watched it just a month ago. But I didn't really enjoy it. I mean, part of the reason I don't like it is, well, for the same reason I don't like Maniac. We're following events from the werewolf's point of view, and I couldn't really decide if I wanted this thing to survive or whether I wanted somebody to put a bullet in its head. I was just a bit conflicted. I didn't know which side to be on, and that definitely affected my enjoyment of the movie. Jenny Agutter's pretty good. Some of the special effects are very good. I particularly liked one of the dream sequences where these kind of Nazi werewolves start throwing petrol bombs in this house. That was really cool. But all the characters in Scotland really annoy me. Those people who just try and cover the whole thing up and pretend that there isn't a werewolf problem. I hated those guys. And the film as a whole, it was just something that I wanted to get through to say that I've seen it. This is a drama film about a guy who goes on a succession of dates. I can't remember that much about it because I've not seen it since the 90s. I do feel a sort of twang of nostalgia for it. I wish I knew exactly what year I watched it actually, but it's not something I would watch now. It was a thing of the time because I myself was getting interested in girls and dating and stuff, and therefore I enjoyed Gregory's Girl. But I doubt most people, most young people these days, will have even heard of this movie. Though I think it did get a belated sequel, like 15 or 20 years further on when Gregory was like in his 30s or something. I've not seen that particular one, but similar to Clash of the Titans, for me, Gregory's Girl is just something in the past. This is a horror anthology which kind of feels like a leftover from the Amicus anthology era because it's produced by the same guy who did those movies, I think Milton Subotsky. Except in this case, there's 3 stories instead of the usual 4 or 5. But if done well, I think that can actually be an advantage having 3 stories rather than 4 or 5. You get to spend more time with them, make them good. But in this instance, sadly, I only really liked one of the 3 stories, which was the middle one, where Donald Pleasance plays a vampire hunter. It's no surprise to me that the story I like the most just happened to have Donald Pleasance in it, in all honesty. Britt Ekland is in that one as well. This is probably the latest that I've ever seen Britt Ekland. She's about 40 in this movie. I've only ever seen her in films from the 70s before, where she was sort of back in her prime, Man with the Golden Gun, Asylum. But the other 2 stories here just didn't really do it for me at all. The wraparound story is quite good. We actually get to spend some time in an actual nightclub that's just for monsters. We get to see some of the monsters performing on stage, and it's really funny and cool. And I liked that side of the movie, but the actual main stories were very hit and miss. I think for this sort of film, you have to have a better strike ratio than just 1 out of 3. Though maybe for other people, they would like the stories that I didn't, but I don't see myself buying this film in the future. I think it was just a one and done for me. This is the only film I can think of which is sort of half war film, half sports film. It's about a group of Allied prisoners of war who form their own little football team, and they get to take on the German national team, and somehow they don't get walloped. They get a 4-4 draw, and there's an escape attempt planned by them for the same day as the match. I can't actually remember if they escape in the end or not. It's been a while since I saw this, but I have seen it 3 times at least, I think. The problem with this film is that it doesn't quite take itself seriously enough. It's really good for most of it. And I think the worst part of the film is the football match. It's just really silly. Pele scores with an overhead kick, and Sylvester Stallone saves a penalty, even though his character knows nothing about football and is quite annoying during the movie. Michael Caine is probably my favourite character in the whole thing. His character is actually meant to be a professional footballer, a centre-half, I think, and I enjoy his performance. He gets the best line, bar none. So the Germans are leading 4-0 just before half-time, and then the Allies pull one back, and then they go in for half-time, and somebody asks Michael Caine what the score is, and he says, well, it's 4-1 to them, but we scored a goal. Absolutely brilliant line. So Escape to Victory, it's all right for a laugh, but I don't really consider it to be that good. This is one of the many slasher films which came out in 1981. It's about these 2 female twins. I'd say they're about 30, and one of them is totally normal. She rents an apartment in this building. She has a totally normal job, etc., etc. But the other twin is totally psychotic. She was sent to an asylum at a very young age, but when this film starts, she escapes and goes after the good twin to try and kill her. She's also got this really dangerous dog to help her do this. God knows where she got the dog from, but it's almost like having an accomplice with her. It's a really vicious little thing. And just to further complicate things with a good twin, this really evil uncle turns up in the second half of the movie. So that it's like a three-pronged attack going after this poor woman. And there's some good scares in this. I mean, it's a cheaply made film, but there's lots of creativity throughout, some really good bits and pieces. And even though it's not one of the better horror films in this particular year, it's just about good enough that I would say if you see it on Prime or Shudder, then I would give it a watch just once, maybe. This is a film which sort of brings back memories of The Eagle Has Landed, given the fact that Donald Sutherland is playing a Nazi sympathiser, living in England, working against England. In this case, I think he's trying to get back to Germany with some crucial bit of information, but a random woman gets in his way somewhere near the coast, or it might be on an island. I can't remember. I remember the climax of the film very vividly when this woman finally takes him down. Sutherland's good value as a villain, but I don't remember it being particularly brilliant. I've only seen it the one time, which was when it was on TV back in the 90s. I can remember it being sort of okay, but nothing special. If you want to hear my view on Piranha 2, go check out my full review. For a score, I think I gave it 2 out of 5. The Beyond was one of the very first reviews I did on my channel. I think it was episode 5. But I kind of cocked up the first 10 reviews I did when I started my channel because I filmed them vertically instead of horizontally. So they're a bit naff, those ones. I was a total noob back then. Still am a noob, really. The Beyond is quite a scary film. It's definitely got its moments. It's got its chills. But what lets it down for me is the tarantula scene. I mean, I'm arachnophobic, so I really can't stomach spiders in any film. And boy, is the spider scene in this one really violent. I mean, you get to see these spiders just claw this guy's eyes out. It is really gross. And the thing is, there's no real reason for these spiders even being in this scene. They just sort of appear out of nowhere. But if you can gloss over that scene, then the rest of the movie is actually pretty good. I could watch this again. I think I'll just skip past that one scene. So The Beyond is a pretty decent horror film, really. This is one of 3 birthday-themed slasher films that I'm aware of that came out in 1981. So there's this, there's Happy Birthday to Me, which I've not seen. You're not going to see that on this list today. And also Madhouse, which we had back at number 19 on this ranking. I didn't mention it during the clip, but that takes place on the Good Twins' birthday, and the final scene has a sort of birthday party in there. So it's weird that all these kind of birthday themed horror films came out around about the same time. This particular one, Bloody Birthday, features 3 young kids who are completely psychotic. They're either brothers and sisters or just friends who live on the same sort of street. I can't exactly remember, but this is a really engrossing film. It's slightly let down by the last 10-15 minutes. I wasn't fully satisfied with the resolution to the movie, but I could possibly watch this one again. It's very unique and very entertaining. Now, let me just say that this is the point of the ranking today where the films start to get really, really good. And I definitely want to make a point of saying that because I think some people might be a little bit surprised that My Bloody Valentine has only come 14th. It is widely regarded as one of the greatest slasher films of all time. Its big disadvantage today is the fact that I've only seen the really truncated version that has a lot of the gore taken out, because that's the only version that you can rent on Prime. And you can't actually buy this in Region B where I live unless you've got a multi-region play, which I currently don't. I am going to fix that in the future, but as it stands, I've not seen the best version of this. I think if I did, probably, possibly, Who knows? It could have cracked the top 10 today. Who knows what would have been possible? But even having only seen the cut version, I still think this is a really well made, well crafted slasher film. I did a full review for this just before Christmas, I think, and I gave it a really favourable review. So I definitely see myself in the future watching more My Bloody Valentine, hopefully when I can get the proper version somehow. John Carpenter currently has two films already in the grand final: Halloween, which won the 1978 rankings, and The Fog, which won the 1980 rankings. He doesn't win today. He's going to be giving somebody else a chance to take top spot. Escape from New York only comes 13th. It's still a good film, though. I've seen this several times since I was a teenager. I always really enjoy it. It's about this futuristic world where New York has been turned into a prison that never seems to see daylight. And this really cool character called Snake Plissken, played by Kurt Russell, has to get dropped in there and rescue the president, who's being played by Donald Pleasance. It's a really fun movie. Lee Van Cleef plays this cop, I think, who puts this chip in the back of Kurt Russell's neck, and if he doesn't rescue the president in time, then this thing will blow up and kill him. But it's just a really cool movie. It's not really a horror film. It's more like a kind of dystopian thriller. I've seen this one more than the sequel, Escape from LA. I think I've only seen the sequel the one time. I've seen this quite a few times, though strangely I don't own it. I need to change that. I'd really like to own this one. I literally just got done reviewing this film. It was my most recent video before this one. So if you want to see a full review for The Prowler, then go check that out. If not, I will quickly say here that this is a very competently made slasher film. It was directed by Joseph Zito, who went on to do Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, which is widely regarded as one of the best Friday films of all time. Tom Savini did the practical and makeup effects on The Prowler. It is some of the most astonishing work you will ever see in a slasher film. The kills in this film have to be seen to be believed. They are absolutely awesome. Quick word of advice: if you live in Region B like me, though, this film is only available to buy as Rosemary's Killer, because there are different titles for this film depending on where you live. I think it's in America, it's called The Prowler. I call it The Prowler as well when I can, because I think that's the best title for it, but just something to be aware of. But this is definitely a really, really cool film, and if you haven't seen it, then it is highly recommended. It's another slasher film. Tobe Hooper directed this one. It's about a group of kids who go to this fairground. It's not the sort of place where you've got roller coasters and things. It's a very small scale sort of fun fair. I guess the biggest ride in the place would be something like the Ghost Train. And for about half the runtime, we follow these kids as they go from stall to stall, but it's never boring. And then in the second half of the film, they get trapped in, well, the Ghost Train, but I think it's called the Fun House, obviously, with that being the title of the movie. And then they're sort of locked in there for the night, and there just so happens to be this guy with a really freaky face in there who starts to go after them, and there's some really well thought out scares in this. I was really gripped throughout, and score up another hit for Hooper. There's so many good films of his that I really enjoy. I'm definitely going to buy this one day. So The Fun House is my number 11. And stay tuned, because the next film at number 10 is another slasher film. Let's find out what it is. This is one that I saw for the first time back in the 90s on TV. I was only about 14 at the time, and I watched it really late at night in my bedroom, and it really scared me. I mean, I was shivering watching this film. Now, we didn't have the internet back then, so I couldn't jump on there the day after and look it up and find out more about it. I just had to carry the title of this film around with me in my head for the longest time. And it was only about 20 years later where I finally pulled the trigger and bought a DVD and decided to go back and have that nostalgic second watch. I wasn't as scared the second time around, obviously being in my 30s, but I still really enjoyed the movie. The only bad thing about it is this one bit where this character escapes and goes to the police station, and nobody believes him that all these murders are happening back at the house. And so he goes back to the house and gets killed. And I just think it's really silly that they put that in there, allowing this guy to get away. If you're going to let him get away at all, then just have him disappear from the movie, because as it is, it's a real stain on the proceedings. But if you can overlook that, then the rest of the film is absolutely brilliant. It's just a shame about the police station stuff, because if that had been taken out, then I think this could have been one of the all-time classic slasher films. As it is, it's just a really, really good one. But I can live with that. I really love Hell Night. It's got a great atmosphere, some really good kills, and just talking about it now makes me want to put it on again. Even though horror is my favourite genre and I'm a complete horror nut, James Bond is my favourite franchise. It's just a weird anomaly in my film watching personality. We already have James Bond representation in the grand final because The Spy Who Loved Me won the 1977 rankings. For Your Eyes Only will not be joining it. Obviously, it's only come ninth today. But that's not to say that it's a bad Bond film. I would probably say that it's middle of the road Bond. It's not up in the top tier with all the classics, but it's definitely nowhere near the bottom. I can't remember now where I put this when I did my Bond film rankings last year, but if I had to guess, I would say I probably put it 12th, 13th, 14th out of 24. There are so many cool things in this film that I would literally be here all day if I name them. So just to keep the video moving, I'll name you one thing I love about For Your Eyes Only, which is the ski chase halfway through. There are so many great segments in it that add up to this hugely satisfying whole. Bond gets to ski on a bobsled. He goes on this massive ski jump. He gets chased by motorbikes in a snowy forest. It's just brilliant stuff. So yeah, I really love For Your Eyes Only. This is an excellent example of how to do a horror sequel. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 when I did my review for it. Yes, it has one or two flaws, such as the brother-sister thing. The characterization in the movie is not that great, and there's no final girl as such. But leaving those things aside, I love the hospital setting. The whole film's got a great atmosphere, and I really like the fact that it takes place on the same night as the first film. You get that continuity for the most part. One thing I've never done is watch 1 and 2 back to back on the same night. I'd really like to do that. I'm surprised I haven't done it already. So I'm going to make a mental note of doing that the next time that I think to put the original film on. The original film, by the way, has made it into the grand final by winning the rankings for 1978. We will not be seeing Halloween 2, though, I'm afraid. Mad Max 2 is my favourite Mad Max movie, and if the world was going to shit in the first movie, then by the time we get to the second one, that process is fully completed. People are now fighting to the death over food and petrol. There's all these psychotic scavengers going around in Jason Voorhees masks, and, well, most of them are just dressed like people from a bad rock band. It's quite funny, but it's such a well-realised world, this. I don't think Mel Gibson has to stretch his range as much the second time around as he did in the first film, but he's still really captivating as a character. I like the gyro captain in this. He says this line of dialogue, which I've repeated myself in real life on numerous occasions just because of this film. So it comes quite early on when Max holds the gyro pilot at gunpoint with a shotgun that doesn't have a shell in it. And once he realizes he's been duped, he says, "That's low," or something like that. And I've said that in real life whenever somebody's sort of played a joke on me or tricked me or something like that. So it's always kind of funny when you go back to these movies and you remember that you've said a certain thing in real life just because of a really incidental moment in a movie. I think my favourite part of this film, apart from all the amazing chases, is when the good guys leave the oil rig refinery place and the bad guys swoop in and start high-fiving each other. They finally got what they really want, and then suddenly, kaboom, the whole place blows up. I always enjoy that moment, but Mad Max 2 on the whole is absolutely amazing. What a classic film. Out of the 2 werewolf films on this list, Howling and American Werewolf in London, I'm definitely a Howling man. I don't even like the other one, but this is a film I've been a fan of ever since I was a teenager when it came on TV, and I watched it and I had a really good time. And flash forward to all these years later, I own the Blu-ray for it. There's just something about Joe Dante's work which really agrees with me. I like his Piranha film. I like Gremlins. He's crafted a brilliant story here. I think the werewolf transformation work is awesome, as are all the other practical effects used in the movie. Dee Wallace is great. And at some point, I'd like to do a Howling review series. I mean, I've not really seen any of the sequels apart from, funnily enough, Howling 6, which also came on TV when I was a teenager, and I remember it being okay, actually. So it's kind of funny that I've seen 1 and 6, but none of the ones in the middle, but that's for another day. I would say that this and a recent British film called Howl are my two favourite werewolf films of all time. This, in my opinion, is one of Jamie Lee Curtis's most underrated films. I only discovered it late last year when I was just randomly looking at her filmography. It's more of a thriller than a horror. It's about this truck driver, played by Stacey Keach, who is travelling from Melbourne to Perth. It's about 3,000 miles, it's a long way. And he suspects that there's a serial killer driving in the same direction as him, and he can't quite decide throughout the movie whether he should just stay the hell away from this guy or investigate him and try and get to the bottom of whether he really is a killer. It's a really cool story. There's great cinematography. You absolutely cannot guess where the plot is going. Jamie Lee is a hitchhiker who Stacey Keach picks up on the way. And there's some great scares in this. I mean, there's this one moment where Jamie Lee and Stacey Keach are parked up for the night in the desert, and Jamie goes for a piss over this desert hill, and just as she's going over it, a flash of lightning in the dark reveals that the killer improbably is parked about 60 yards away. It's a moment which really makes you go, whoa, Jesus, you know. So if you've never seen Road Games, give it a try because it is an underrated gem. The Burning is one of the best summer camp slasher films of all time. It's got a great killer in Cropsey, this guy who is just burned from head to toe. He's all blackened, but somehow he's still alive. There's great characters in this one. The setting's amazing. I think it was filmed in Buffalo, but the surrounding lakes and woodlands just look awesome. Tom Savini does the kills on this. There's one iconic moment where all these kids get killed on a raft, which is just brilliant. And I'm sure in my own mind that if this screenplay had been retooled slightly to be a Friday the 13th film, it would be regarded as one of the best Friday films of all time. It's that good. I absolutely love The Burning. And I'm really sad that it's not going through to the grand final. I mean, it's only fourth today. That's not enough to get you through to the final. I think if this had come out in any other year before 81, it probably would have finished first or second, but that's just the way the chips fall. The possible exception is 78, where Halloween and Dawn of the Dead came in the top two. That might have been a tough duo to crack, but any other ranking I've done up to this point, I think The Burning would have come one or two. The competition today is just ridiculous, but I'm oh so sad that this film has to be eliminated at this point. So let's find out what then is at number 3. It was very, very close between Friday 2 and The Burning. I think what tipped the scales slightly towards Friday is just the fact that I've been a fan of it for longer. I only discovered The Burning late last year, but it doesn't matter really because third and fourth are both eliminated. But for the longest time, this was my favourite Friday film, actually. I think the last time I did a ranking, I only put this third. I say only. It's still a great slasher film. I like Sackhead Jason. Ginny's one of the best final girls in all of horror as far as I'm concerned. There's great kills in this, great characters. I love the setting at the camp counselor training place. And I guess Jason has really got one over Michael Myers today because Halloween 2 only came 8th. Now in general, even though I love both Friday the 13th and Halloween, I'm usually slightly more a Halloween guy. But today, Jason has definitely got one over Michael because I think Friday 2 is a little bit better than Halloween 2. Yep, Evil Dead is our first qualifier today for the grand final. The funny thing is, I'm not as big an Evil Dead fan in general as I am for those other two franchises. I was just talking about Halloween and Friday the 13th. I can't even be bothered to watch Ash versus the Evil Dead, for instance. I don't really watch a lot of long-running TV shows these days, but the 4 films in this series are really cool. There isn't a weak one among them, really, but I think the first film, the original, is the best in this series. I do prefer my Evil Dead stuff to be more on the side of the horror than the comedy, though I do like some of the comedy as well, but in this first movie, it's a really grueling roller coaster ride. The practical effects on the demons or whatever they're called, they're absolutely amazing. I reviewed all four of these films. You'll find those in my Evil Dead playlist. Last year, I actually got to see this first film at the cinema, which was a great experience for me. There was a time when there weren't really any new films coming out apart from Tenet, but the cinemas were still open, so they kept having to put these really old films on, and they showed Evil Dead one week, and as soon as I found out they were showing it, I was down there like a shot. There were only 6 people in the screening that I could count. People these days, they've just got no respect for the old classics, but I had a good time. I was really grateful to get the chance to see it on the big screen, and I'm pleased to be able to put this film through to the final. So what is left here? I mean, what could possibly have beaten The Burning, Friday 2, Evil Dead, among others? I mean, what is left to come? Let's find out. Raiders of the Lost Ark is our number 1 then, and isn't it funny that after all the horror films we've had today, a non-horror film comes in the last minute and takes the victory? I mean, 75% of this list, it feels like, have been horror films, and yet here's Raiders, top of the pile. But I've been a massive Indiana Jones fan my entire life. I saw Temple of Doom at the cinema when I was just 5, and I'm pretty sure that I'd already seen Raiders on home video even before then. But when I was growing up, we always had the complete trilogy taped off the TV and just sat on the shelf, and we'd watch those films every single year. My brother loved these, my dad loved these, and I think this film could do very well in my grand final. Actually, there's so much to love about this film. The temple at the beginning with the rolling boulder and the darts that come out the wall and stuff. I love Cairo as a setting. There's a great story here. I love the ending with that never-ending warehouse. And my favourite moment in the movie, bar none, is when Indy comes across this swordsman who starts swinging this sword around, and then he just pulls his pistol out and kills him. It's just one of the most amazing movie moments of all time. When I sat down to write the order that I was going to put the films in today, Raiders went straight to number 1. Even though we've had all these great horror films like The Burning and Evil Dead and stuff, it was not even a shred of doubt in my mind that this would be number 1. So there we have it. That concludes my ranking for today. I guess there's one more question that might be worth asking. Given the fact that we had 25 films in the rankings today, you probably won't be surprised to learn that there aren't really that many films left from 81 that I regret having not seen. I could name 2 off the top of my head. Both of them are horror films. One's called Happy Birthday to Me, which I briefly mentioned as we were going through. And the other one is Omen 3. Now, I really do like the first 2 Omen films, and if you've been watching the videos up to this point, you'll know that I previously said I was going to make a big effort to watch Omen 3 in time for the 81 ranking. Sadly, I didn't do it, but I guess if I do an Omen review series at some point in the future, at least I'll still have a brand new Omen film to look forward to, because number 3 is the only one I've not seen. Oh, and the remake as well. So 3 and the remake from that series I've not seen. I've seen 1, 2, and 4. So Happy Birthday to Me and Omen 3 are films that I would have liked to have watched and added to today's ranking. There was a film called Scanners, which was free to watch on one of my streaming platforms, which I was tempted to bung on, and that would have been an extra film. But ultimately, I just wasn't quite interested in it enough to go there. But I guess that's it. I guess that just about covers things. So that's been today's ranking. Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Evil Dead are the 2 qualifiers for the grand final. I'll be back soon with a ranking for 1982.